SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
State Treasurer David McRae has put hundreds of millions back into the hands of Mississippi's citizens, expanding the state's affordable college and career savings program and also returning record amounts of unclaimed money. Check out how Treasurer David McRae's office can help you, your business, or your organization. Treasury.ms.gov.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Middays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. Middays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Midday SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Friday Eve.
Heck dang yeah, Friday Eve. Had a delightful drive home yesterday from the Golden Triangle area, Columbus. We were up there, of course, for the Columbus Lounge Convention and Visitors Bureau. Good day we had up there. Back in the Element Wealth studio, SuperTalk headquarters today, all buckled up and ready to go. And we got a lot to get to. We got Major Johnny Polous and Chief Billy Kelley, Gulfport Fire Department, also Vice Chair of Mississippi First Responders Taskforce, on the program. In the next segment, we'll get an update from the Major and the Chief on the 1034 project. This is a wellness program for first responders that I recall when the Major was assigned to that duty. We discussed it on the program, but those gentlemen will be joining us in the next segment to give us an update on their efforts. And then it's Senator Brice Wiggins. He, of course, represents District 52, Jackson County, serves as the chair of the Senate Judiciary A Committee. And we'll get his thoughts on the political landscape across the state and the nation, and certainly the changing of the supermajority in the Mississippi State Senate, that the result of Tuesday's election. And some other things that he cares to discuss with respect to legislation that has failed to get across the finish line, legislation that certainly will be debated and negotiated and deliberated this coming session. In the meantime, here in Mississippi, with the victories by, at least in a couple of Senate races, thus negating the supermajority in the upper chamber, just feels like, Rhino, the Democrats are getting a little over their skis with respect to the celebration. You still don't have any majorities in the standard lawmaking process in the House and the Senate. You're still in the minority significantly. And, of course, you don't control the governor's mansion or any other statewide offices. I would hardly say that these two races they won as a result of orders by the Department of Justice to redistrict represents this major change in attitude and gravitation of voters to the Democrats. But their press releases and their communications would reflect that, in my view. It's historic.
I mean, if you had a football team that hadn't won a game in what felt like forever, and all of a sudden they score a touchdown, the celebration for that touchdown is probably going to be a little bit greater than the celebration for a touchdown for a team that scores every time they touch the ball.
That's true. Well, I would hardly say that it represents a rebuke by the voters, right, of the policies that have been enacted by Republicans in the state, which, of course, hold majorities in the chambers and in the lawmaking dimensions of the state. So a little premature, a little over the skis. All the other various metaphors one would assign to that. It just, I don't know that I'd call it historic by any stretch of the imagination, but that is the word they have chosen to use in their press releases. Historic victory! You're celebrating that you went from 36 to 34? Is that? I think I got the numbers right. It's either 36, 34, 34, 32.
34 to
32, is that right?
Going up.
No, in terms of, well, actually, I was thinking about the Republicans' reduction. It's hardly a cause for celebration in the Senate where there are 52 who serve. So, in fact, it's less than 1% away from a supermajority, still maintaining the necessary 3/5 majority to pass bills related to taxes, for example. Pretty big deal. The 2/3 would represent a supermajority, and that gives you a little bit more power.
Is there a pool going yet on who the Mississippi mansion will be, as in Joe Manchin, as in the one Democrat that
that's true.
Gets all the attention because they're the one that's most likely to vote?
Yeah, that's a good point. Hadn't thought about that. But let's be honest, the supermajority majority scenario, it's relatively rare. Veto situation, constitutional amendments, some procedural changes. I mean, honestly, the majority, assuming everybody caucuses and stays in line, is by far more important than anything else because the vast majority of the legislation in the state flows through those chambers on a majority basis and then makes its way to the governor where it either gets signed or doesn't, allows it to become law by not signing it. We know that's happened under current Governor Reeves on a couple of measures. Or they veto it and send it back. And yes, with supermajorities, the Republicans could override a governor's veto. Can't do that now because of the change in the balance of power in the Senate. I'm just here to say that I wouldn't exactly be out in the streets celebrating these two seats, only one because of orders from the court on racial lines. That's the other problem, and that's, I think, at risk of being struck down by the Supreme Court. And I would like to see.
Likely at this point.
It sure does.
Just based on the analysis of the oral arguments. Because
it's discrimination. It's wide open discrimination. It's exactly what they complain about all the time, and I guess accuse Republicans of doing. You're discriminating. You're biased. What the hell do you think this is? It's exactly what it is. So I don't know. But I get it. They're out, as you said. They're scored finally, and they're spiking the ball, as the metaphor goes.
I mean, I was thinking more along the lines of if you've ever seen that movie, The Little Giants, and we got 1 yard, or whatever it was. Like they got really excited for something really small.
Yeah. But literally, Rhino, in the press release, the title, Historic Victory, Mississippi Democrats Break Republican Supermajority. And then the first statement, in an historic rebuke. No, it wasn't. It wasn't a historic rebuke. It's 2 districts. A historic rebuke of extremism. Not even close. shattered the Republican. They put a little AI on digging up some really powerful adjectives and nouns there, didn't they? And it kind of falls a little short. Decisive Democrat wins. Oh, my gosh. Key districts from the Delta to the Pine Belt. Okay.
Tim from Tupelo chimes in, like the Saints scoring a touchdown this year.
That's right.
Epic.
Yeah,
I wasn't trying to make it personal. I was trying to keep it away from any teams people might be rooting for and or having rough years with.
Yeah. And, Andy, that's not true, man. A big deal of supermajority couldn't even agree on basic tenets of conservatism. Well, it's not because of the supermajorities. That really didn't play into that. You're right. We certainly could argue about legislation that is not, shall we say, unanimously, or even in the case of some legislation, doesn't garner a majority of Republican support, Rhino, such as certificate of need laws, mobile sports betting, education freedom, the ballot initiative, right, to name but a few off the top of my head. I know there are others, but we know those are some high-profile matters, issues that do not receive universal Republican support. All of those, we should point out, did make their way through the House, but get kiboshed in the Senate, typically pocket vetoed by your friend over there, Senator Dennis DePauw, on the education side, and Senator David Blunt on the mobile sports betting, for example. Coming right back with Major Johnny Polous. Stay with us.
Find your family.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Attention, adoring fans!
It's time for Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Sets me off to a full-on child. Yes, it does.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. We are in the Element Wealth Studio. It's our pleasure to welcome back to the Element Wealth Studio Major Johnny Polous, Director of the 1034 Project, Officer Wellness and Resiliency Program, of course, Mississippi Highway Patrol, and Chair of the Mississippi First Responders Taskforce. And also joining us, Chief Billy Kelley, Gulfport Fire Department, and Vice Chair, Mississippi First Responders Taskforce. Major, Chief, glad you guys could be with us today.
Thanks for
coming
having
in.
us.
Yeah,
Thank you.
as always. All right, so I was just telling the audience in the first segment there, Major, that I remember when you came on the program and talked about this new assignment, and you and I had just had a discussion when you were handling public affairs for the Highway Patrol. I think I just mentioned, asked a question of you, I should say, about how some of the troopers and first responders and officers deal with some of these situations that they encounter. It's not like you can just block that out of your head and go home and carry on your life as usual and not think about that. And I think you said, it's interesting you asked that, Gerard, because this is a new program they were about to form up, and here you are, and I've commented that in my years of knowing you and talking to you, I think you're a perfect fit for this. So,
well, I appreciate you saying that, Gerard.
Absolutely, 100%. So give me an update. Where are we?
So in July, the governor signed House Bill 1268, creating the Mississippi First Responders Taskforce.
Right.
And our goal is to study things, mainly evidence-based practices, where we can recognize PTSD issues and address the issue of suicide. I mean, it's a touchy subject. It's for first responders, and I know Billy will agree with this, there's a stigma attached to anything related to mental health. With first responders, the bottom line is we're the protectors, right? And that is perceived as weakness when we have to talk about mental health, but it is a problem. It's well known. Stats show that we lose more law enforcement officers to suicide than we do to in the line of duty deaths. And Billy can attest to this too. with firefighters. You know, it's a problem, but luckily we do have this task force now to look at some things, and hopefully we'll have some really good recommendations from the members to put in this report.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so Chief, tell us about your involvement in this program.
Yeah, so I was, very excited when this happened, and to be a part of it. 6 months ago, we lost a firefighter to suicide, and we've tried to push things as far as peer support groups and CIT training and CISM training, and like Johnny said, firefighters are 3 times more likely to die from suicide than in a line of duty.
Unbelievable.
The stigma is that we are the protectors. We're there to help. But, our guys are human, and they see this every day, and they try to go home and raise a family, and it's tough. So I'm glad it's brought to light.
Yeah. And so, Chief, have you heard some feedback from the firefighters that this is really helping me through some of these situations?
Big deal. I've been approached by many of them, and we're starting from the ground up now with our recruit classes when they come in, introducing this. You're still going to have some of the old timers that are in there, and it's, hey, suck it up mentality, but that's just not the way to deal with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Major, there's no shame in this if you have a problem with this. Like you said, you're still a human being. You're a first responder. You're doing your duty. You're doing your job. But you're still comprised of blood and flesh, like all humans are. And honestly, you want them to have emotions like that, and to feel the compassion whenever you have this sort of harm to humanity that they encounter firsthand. The rest of us are insulated from, honestly.
That's right. And you do become desensitized to this line of work, being a first responder. And Billy and I, we're the old guys, but I can tell you we've learned a lot, too. And the biggest thing for us is to start normalizing these type of conversations. But not only normalizing conversations, we have to start implementing practices. For instance, training. We have to start somewhere, right? We train in the fire academy. We train in our law enforcement academy to go out there and to do the job to protect yourself along with protecting the public. But what have we done to train that person on the mental fitness side? I like to refer to it as mental fitness. On how to go out and survive a 20, 25, maybe 30-year career in this business. We've never done that. We've never scratched the surface. We have to start now. The new generation. We've got an opportunity, and I think we need to capitalize on it.
So Chief, has anything changed through the years? I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this question. Are the scenarios that a first responder may encounter now, are they more horrific than they were, say, a couple of decades ago? Is that even a fair question? I'm not sure, but
I think it's always been bad. I think we're seeing more of it now. When I started the fire service, we didn't run every single medical call. We didn't run all that. To where now we're running, City of Gulfport, we're running over 16,000 calls a year. So we're seeing, head-on collisions. We're seeing, sexual violence, with children. We're seeing children pass, and they're in on every call, just like the law enforcement. I think one of the statistics was the average person in the general population sees 3 traumatic events through a lifetime, and a first responder experiences 9 a year. So you do that, the math over a 25, 30-year career, it starts to accumulate.
I mean, I don't think humans are designed to endure those sorts of scenarios, and that's what you guys, where you come in, right, Major, and try to help them through these situations.
Absolutely. And again, going back to the training aspect of it, we're still going to have our things that we like to refer to in training that we have to have in place, right? But we also need to get to a point in training and tell them that this mental armor, the psychological armor that you're going to have to develop throughout your career is just as important, or maybe more important, than the equipment that you are issued into these academies. Again, it's conversations we've never had in the past. I think you saw something. Maybe you had a vision when you brought that up to me.
I don't know about that. It just hit me like, I don't know how these guys deal with coming up upon these scenarios.
Right.
without it affecting them, and be fit to go do it again the next day.
Absolutely. And look, we have to give thanks where thanks is due to House Representative Kevin Felser and Commissioner Sean Tindall for getting involved in this and actually playing a big role in standing the task force up. We can talk all day, right? You and I had that conversation almost 5 years ago.
That's
Gerard.
right. Yep.
Well, now we have something in place that we're hoping we're going to be able to move the needle and progress through this and really help these first responders and their families.
So, Chief, is this part of training? Is some courses or some sort of examples? Are they included in training as one becomes a first responder, or do we wait till after they've encountered these situations to provide the therapy?
In the past, it's been you're responding to a thing, and in the academy, it's not taught.
Okay,
and I love Johnny's mental fitness. I love that because the mental health stigma. People don't like that. If you had heart disease or diabetes, you would treat it.
Yeah.
And being physically fit and mentally fit are, just as important. If fire trucks right now are $900,000 to $1 million a piece, that piece of equipment is useless if I don't have good, fit team members to put on.
Totally. Sure. So, well, is this something, Major, that makes sense to include as part of their academy experience?
Absolutely. Today's going to be an important day for us with the task force. We've got some administrators that are going to be presenting. This is a tough subject. You have to have buy-in from the administration along with the buy-in from the first responders, right? But we're going to have our director of the Mississippi Law Enforcement Officers Training Academy that's going to present today on, some things that he thinks that we can implement into training, again, to normalize this conversation. And we're hoping one day, I don't know if I'll see it, Billy, but we're hoping one day we can walk into a briefing and talk about mental fitness just as easily as we talk about anything with the law enforcement aspect or the firefighter aspect.
It just seems pretty critical, pretty important to me. And, it could be a situation where it may be included in academy training, and because they've never experienced, it maybe doesn't sink in right then. But as you would hope, of course, when they do have those kinds of situations, they sort of recall that.
That's right.
And it is valuable to them.
Absolutely.
So, guys, we appreciate you coming in.
Thank you for having us.
It's been enjoyable, and appreciate all the great work you do. And, of course, Major, we very much appreciate all the men and women of the Mississippi Highway Patrol, and, of course, all of our first responders, firefighters, police officers. Thank you, Chief.
We appreciate the SuperTalk family as well.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. We're stepping aside for a break. We're coming right back.
I'm just doing my job.
From the
Come on.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
All right, we are back
on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Orchestral maneuvers if you leave. That was from the All Hit Request line. Appreciate that, Rhino, for digging that up. It's a good tune. A lot of fun. So, we're back with you in the Element Well studio. We appreciate, of course, the Major and the Chief for coming in today to talk about the project that they work on, the 1034 project, Officer Wellness and Resiliency Program for the first responders in our state. And, man, if anybody deserves that sort of access to those sorts of resources and therapies and treatments, it would certainly be our first responders that encounter some really difficult situations that will just wear on the human brain and heart and body, no doubt about it. What do you say that on average 3 such incidents in a lifetime, right?
Yeah, the average person experiences
average person.
3 traumatic events in a lifetime.
Versus, I think, 16 in a year? Is that what I heard?
9.
9 in a year, okay.
9 a year.
9 a year, okay. Well, 3 times as many in a year as the rest of us on average experience in a lifetime is a lot. So, appreciate that for sure. Before we went to break, we were just talking about the, I would say, premature celebration by the Democrats over flipping a couple of seats here in Mississippi, thus negating the Republican supermajority. And just acting like they just won the Super Bowl, as the saying goes, and that is not the case. By the way, big news, I know you've been shedding tears over this one. Nancy Pelosi has announced she will not seek re-election, having served 20 terms. 20! 40 dang years in the United States House of Representatives. And so, I'll make this point. I've never agreed with the idea that seniority is what gets you higher level positions in our government. It's at all levels, right? It's not just the federal level. It's generally speaking at the state level as well, to some extent. And in this case, talking about her serving as Speaker of the House. You know, there were at least a handful of Democrats, when the Democrats had control of the Speaker, that would have been better as the Speaker than her, in my opinion. Marginally better, maybe. I will give it this to her, though, which is a critical skill when one is the Speaker. She's a pretty good vote counter, as the saying goes. I give her that. And she's pretty coy as a legislator. That's a kind of a different assessment than her just overall intellectual package. How about that? So she's announced this morning, and the president has already weighed in saying this would be great for America for her to step out of the way. Of course, just serving in that seat as she does now, I don't think should the Democrats gain control of the House, certainly she wouldn't be the next Speaker. Hakeem Jeffries, of course, is in line for that. Isn't he something, by the way? He's pretty weak. But be hard for me to imagine that anyone in that district would arise, talking about her San Francisco area district, that would, I guess, depart too much from her worldview. I think we're going to get another sort of Nancy Pelosi in terms of their vision, their policy positions, their worldview, etc. That's what I'm expecting. And who that might be, I don't know. I haven't heard of any prospective candidates that have emerged as her potential replacement. But that's certainly some big breaking news at the federal level, is that a longtime powerful member of a party, that being Nancy Pelosi, is not going to seek re-election. That would be for her 21st 21st congressional term. She's not going to do it. So she's out. Now,
it's going to be Weiner.
You in that district?
Oh, yeah.
He's moving into that district? Talking about Anthony Weiner?
Scott Weiner.
Oh, Scott Weiner. Okay, yeah. I hadn't thought about that. Is that making rumblings about that?
Yeah, he's pretty much the dark horse at this point.
Okay.
I guess he's not even the dark horse if he's getting this much talk.
Yeah. But, again, I don't see that really changing things significantly at all. It's just news because she's a former speaker, she's been there a long time, and she's not running again. So,
Plus, how often do you get to say wiener on the air?
That's true. That'd be fantastic. Now, doesn't he serve in the Assembly?
He's in the state.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
He's a state senator.
Okay, gotcha. Moving on over. Speaking of state senator.
Pretty progressive, but for where he's voted from, he's considered a moderate. That tells you how wacky California is.
Gee whiz. Well, in particular, that district, which could be argued that maybe the heart of crazy liberalism right there. So, old Zoran Mondami, is the New York Post having some fun with their front page, their cover pages? They're excellent at that, right? Here we zo is what they said yesterday. On your marks, M-A-R-X. Really, really good. And then they got one today. I can't recall what it said, but it too was clever. Today's cover of the New York Post, again, focused on Mondami. I know you may be looking that up. So I did want to point this out that is maybe getting overlooked, is that all this stuff he's...
Leader of the free world, but between free and world, there's everything in parentheses. Leader of the free everything world.
There you go. Oh, man, that's so clever. He's won on the heels of a number of proposals that seem to resonate with electors. And it turns out the vast majority of those cannot be accomplished without some help from Albany, where their state capital resides. In other words,
can't even transition without more donations. He put out a video asking for more money.
Well, and so you may ask, I had this conversation at breakfast this morning going through his list, like freeze rent, can't do that. Eliminate bus fares citywide. They're owned by the state. Can't do that. Raise the minimum wage. Can't do that. Raise corporate or millionaires' taxes. Can't do that. Implement city-owned grocery stores. Can't do that. None of that's possible without legislation passing at the state capitol in New York, in upstate New York, in Albany. Now,
well, with the way big Democrat-run cities spin things and celebrate little victories like they're big victories, they'll probably find some way, some workaround to open a bodega that's government run, and they'll have a big photo opportunity out front with the podium and everything. It'll be like when they got, oh, look, we got dumpsters for your trash. And they got three of them lined up, and you had to, you flip the top open, and you throw your bag in, and you close the top. Ta-da! And they're going to do that all over again. And the idiots that vote that way will lap it up, and it'll be the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then everybody else that's sane and normal and reasonable is going to look at it like, what are y'all smoking?
Well, he's tapped into those sentiments. There are people who say, stabilize the rent and raise the minimum wage. All these things sound very, very popular, except one little problem. You can't do it without some help from Albany. Now, he has some allies up there. But so far, the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, has objected to these proposals, and you need her on board as well. Now, as you know, that differs from state to state. So in some states, a city could levy an income tax on its population as it sees fit without authority from the state government. New York's not like that. It's highly restrictive. But he's making these proposals, and he's unable to do it without some help, but it just seems like that's been missed. And so people, I was telling you, some of my friends at breakfast say, well, why didn't, his opponents point that out? Well, Sleva doesn't really ever talk about that stuff. Cuomo did, but it's Cuomo. That's the problem. You just tune it out because he's so arrogant and so condescending and so sanctimonious and so yesterday that you needed somebody else that people would pay attention to point out the farce of Mondami's proposals. We're stepping aside for a break. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio. Senator Brice Wiggins at 12:20 today.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
Now, on to the real part.
Dynamite!
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We're with you in the Element Wealth studio today on In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar. You'll hear an interview with actor Kevin Sorbo, who is best known for his roles on Hercules, the TV series, God's Not Dead, and many more.
Kevin Sorbo.
Yeah, hadn't heard that in a while. C-Spire text line, 601-879-4395. Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income growth and guarantees. You do not want to check your money today because it's all in the red. The Dow down 442. The NASDAQ down 400 some odd points as well. The volatility index, also known as the VIX, it is up today. And Rhino, I believe the funny money cracked the $100,000 mark last I checked. Fell below it, as you and I were discussing the other day. Price of oil fell below $60 to $59. Well, that's right at $100,000 right now, but I think it has crossed into the territory just below that. It's 100.
Yeah, it dipped south of 100.
Yeah, now 100,009.
I think the lowest it got was 98.9.
Okay, so not really sure what's causing the sell-off in that arena, other than just tracking the rest of the markets. I think there's some general concerns about earnings and the market getting a little too frothy from the artificial intelligence play, which honestly has been the primary, if not almost singular, driver of the great markets we have seen the last couple of months. And all those companies are doing well, making money, generating profits, but the price of the stock, which is based on the price-earnings ratio, is way on up there. And then when investors see it getting into that kind of territory, they say, yeah, they're doing well, but not quite that well to justify the price of the stock, and they start selling it off. And then the other thing that's got markets a bit unnerved are the tariffs. And the Supreme Court, I would say, Rhino, indicating leaning in towards perhaps striking down the president's tariff imposition. And that is not going to bode well for markets. Not that the markets want tariffs or don't want tariffs as much as it is, we just want to know the rules of the road here. And because what's likely to happen, let's say the Supreme Court comes out and says, yeah, you're out of your scope of authority here, executive branch, and imposing these tariffs doesn't meet all the standards from the various statutes. And then there's, as you know, there are sections within those statutes that specifically apply. And I think what's going to happen is the administration's probably going to go back, regroup, and say, well, let's find some other statutory approach. And then something comes up. And now they may be running out of options, honestly. But
it'll depend on how the opinion's written and what all is said. But it seems like they're going to say that his only tariff creation power would lie in putting tariffs on adversarial countries that are a risk to national defense or national trade.
And specifically,
that you can't just blanket every country with something like that.
Which typically falls under the category of reciprocal tariffs. And that's what the courts seem to be suggesting, that they just can't find it within the scope of power of the executive branch to impose tariffs. Just, okay, you're going to hit us with 50, here's 60, take that. That doesn't really rise to the level of emergency powers being used and relied on by the president to do so. So it could be a situation where some of the tariffs are ruled null and void, and some aren't. And then you get, and this is what I think is going to spook the markets, this notion of repaying the money that's been paid by American companies to the U.S. Treasury in accordance with the tariffs imposed. How dang much of a mess would that be? I mean, think about the IRS trying to figure out, the Treasury Department, how to refund that money. And if they have to distinguish between, reciprocal tariffs, because that's like literally down to the product level could be. That could be sticky. Bottom line is markets look at that and say, yeah, we need stability. We need to know what the heck's going on here. The president says it would be a disaster for the country and for the world. Says it may be the most important case in the history of the nation, this tariff case that the justices are hearing. So this is interesting. Interesting development, interesting to watch. And we're going to take a break right now because it's top of the hour. Fox News, SuperTalk News. The Dow just dipped into negative territory below 500 now, 500 points down, I should say. So we're coming right back. Stay with us.
Hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays. We're in the Element Wealth studio on this
Friday Eve.
Man, yeah, so I've been getting blown up, and I appreciate people are making me aware. Journey has announced they're going to South Haven. And
Tupelo.
And Tupelo, right. They're going to be making a tour through here. So, and they're kind of calling this their farewell tour, but I don't know.
Final Frontier Tour.
Right, the Frontier Tour, Final Frontier Tour.
A special evening with Journey.
It's so awesome. That the Final Frontier Tour 2026, June 27th at Cadence Bank Arena. We were just up there, of course, hosting the show for the Digital Innovation Summit. It's a great a venue as well, right? In Tupelo. So maybe I missed it. I said South Haven. I'm not sure. Are they going to South Haven, the DeSoto
I was
facility?
deferring to your
Yeah, that's my bad.
Journey.
I misread it. I tell you why is because it was like DeSoto County people sending it to me, and it didn't open it up and blow it up. But so maybe they're not. Maybe it's just Tupelo, Cadence Bank.
Because I had just heard about the Tupelo one.
Yeah. Well, that's still close, though, super big deal. Yeah. So I'm going to have to try to figure that one out. June 27th. Yeah, that's, in fact, their big Frontiers tour of 1983 when they played at the Vet in Philadelphia. You can watch the whole dang concert on YouTube, and which sometimes I do, I'll have to acknowledge and admit. But it, too, I believe, was in June, it turns out, as the sun was setting across the skyline of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania there in the background from the Vet. The boys were on the stage there entertaining. The place was packed, of course, when they would sell out arena rock days. Really cool. All right, so
I don't see another really close one. I mean, you got Memphis in March.
Okay, in Mississippi.
Yeah, there's not another one in Mississippi. There's New Orleans in March. There's Little Rock in March. So it's like that's part of their southern tour. There's some in Florida and South Carolina, and then the Tupelo date is actually 4th from the final tour date.
Oh, okay. 4th from the final tour date. Interesting. That's something. Well,
would that be the pre-ante-penultimate?
Yeah, exactly. Well, should be fun. Looking forward to it. It's going to be a big old deal. The boys, it's hard to believe they're on up there in age, as you know, in their mid-70s. So, wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, it's pre-ante-penultimate, 4th from last.
Okay. 4th from, what'd you call it?
Pre-ante-penultimate.
Haven't heard of that one. I would expect
got the penultimate.
Okay.
And then the ante-penultimate, and then the pre-ante-penultimate.
Oh, man. Well, the boys, of course, like I said, get on up there, as we all are. I had a friend that attended a Paul McCartney concert. I think it was last week, if I'm not mistaken, in New Orleans. He's like, 82, 83? My friend, a big...
83.
Yeah, big...
Turned 83 in June.
Man, incredible. Said that his voice was still strong. He performed, was very animated, like the old days. That's amazing. Amazing. He said it when they got towards the end. I don't know if this was planned or not. He says, I got to go home. That's pretty cool. But can you imagine 83?
There are some people, they just defy aging. Like, look at Dick Van Dyke.
Yeah, he's 100.
Pushing 100.
Yeah, and always got a smile on his face and, moving about.
He's got a cane, but he's more often dancing with the cane than using the cane.
That's right. I was going to say, he still has those kind of frolicking moves and gestures the way he did on his show, which, by the way, as you know, you can catch on those networks that carry the old classic shows. They were so well done. I mean, to fit that into a 30-minute show and always had kind of a cool plot and lots of just funny situations and scenarios.
And you didn't have multiple years between seasons.
That's right.
That's the problem with the current streaming Netflix-led model is, you'll have these great TV shows that come out and you'll get 8 to 12 episodes a season, and then you'll wait 2 to 3 years for the next season of 8 to 12 episodes. And it's like, well, how in the world did they make TV before this where they pumped out 23, 24, 30-plus episodes every single year?
It's true, totally true.
And some shows, multiple seasons a year.
That's totally true. Really good writers, I would say. Imagine that as a job. You had to come up with something new like that. And, of course, the cool thing about the Dick Van Dyke Show is the theme of the show was that they were writers for a variety show, right? The Alan Brady Show. Remember that? That was really well done, I thought. Man, oh, man. And sort of believable. It kind of represented our culture of the day. Lived in, New Rochelle, New York, I think. That's where it was set. Rob, Petrie. Oh, that's good stuff. Just digressing a bit. So, reports are that the Supreme Court, as we shared with you earlier, Supreme Court appears, skeptical of the president's tariffs. This is going to wreak havoc, I believe, on the markets and the economy. Again, it's the uncertainty. Tim from Tupelo says, I'll be there, G. We'd love to meet you. Man, I'm working on it right now, just so you'll know. On get some tickets. But let's do it, Tim. I look forward to that. Let's stay in touch on that. Should be cool. Let's see. Also, Mo says that Kevin Sorbo was in Andromeda as well. Now, I don't recall that. We're not talking about the sci-fi Andromeda strain, huh? That's before his time.
No, there was another show. It was from Gene Roddenberry's universe in the Star Trek kind of universe called Andromeda that he was on. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that, Mose. I do recall
early 2000s show.
Okay, I do recall when I was a kid the Andromeda strain. Was that kind of a prescient warning about COVID. It was COVID. We didn't go quite as crazy as they did in the movie. Remember that? It's pretty brilliant. From a book, by the way. It was well done. Sci-fi sort of virus taking over. I don't know, man. They had a little ability to see around the corner, as the saying goes. Yeah, Mo says, think about soaps. New episode 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, and some of these have been on for decades. You're absolutely right, Mose, except I will say this, though. They can take like one little subject, stretch that across the entire hour. Like, how many more times can we beat this
Gotta have
up?
14 cuts to reaction shots of people with their mouth agape and the strings playing really violently.
I love the spoof Saturday Night Live used to do, the Californians. Remember that? I can't remember the female's name, but to your point, whenever some revelation would come out, and she just have her mouth wide open. What a great comedian actor she was. But the Californians, what are you doing here? Remember that? So good.
And in that, well, not the same era, but similar era, you had Tim Conway just cracking anybody up in the audience and on stage. Didn't matter. He was just going to make you laugh.
Just looking at him made you laugh, right? Just absolutely looking at him, yeah.
Like there was a clip of, Mama's Family?
Yeah.
That it was on my feed last night, and it was Tim Conway telling the Siamese elephant story.
Yeah.
Where they were joined at the trunk, and they could not keep it together.
Oh, my gosh. Good stuff. Of course, he would always keep you in stitches on the Carol Burnett show, right? Remember the old Carol Burnett show from the early 70s, I think?
Maybe that's what it was from, because Mama's Family was a spinoff of that.
A spinoff of that, that's right. He was just so hilarious, all the various characters, and how he could do it, because he cracked the whole staff.
Oh, yeah, he had that one where he's the old man on the motorized wheelchair, and he was like supposed to go out the window, and the window didn't break, so he just kind of did like a little dance with the wheelchair and then went out the window again.
He was so good, man. Yep. All right, guys, we're going to take a break right here, just digressing, reminiscing a bit, having a little fun. We're in the Element Well studio. We'll be right back.
Strong hands. Bring it on! Middays with Gerard Gibert. It is on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We were all down at Margie's bar, telling stories if we had one. Someone fired the old jukebox up. The song it sure was a sad one. Teardrop rolled down.
Welcome back in the Element Well studio. Mo says John Delancey. Is that right? I'm not familiar with who that is. Went from Eugene on Days of Our Lives, that, of course, a daytime soap opera, to become Q on Star Trek. Okay.
Yeah, kind of a all-powerful, all-knowing character on Next Generation. Was it Q? I think it was.
Yeah.
Not the biggest Star Trek fan, but I'm aware of it. He also mentioned Bob and June Wheeler on Night Court went on to be Data. Brent Spiner.
I didn't think about that.
Oh, yeah. Guy that was always showing up at court.
You know, there was, I seem to recall that there was a soap opera that was like the longest running television series ever. I'm trying to think of the name of it. It had the skyline of Cincinnati, and I think I found that out like watching Jeopardy or something. Those crazy night something or another.
Guiding Light.
Was that it? That one of them had.
Started on the radio and continued on television from 1952 to 2009 for a total run of 72 years.
That's a pretty long time. Yeah.
And the longest running American soap opera is General Hospital.
Oh, okay. Well, that, believe it or not, was popular when I was in college because all the guys were in love with Laura. It kind of the theme, if you will, sort of departed from what happens in a hospital, which was kind of the old way of the old theme and subject matter of the show, to Luke and Laura having a little affair, running around all over the place. Luke, of course, I don't remember his last name. It had the big curly hair. And Laura was the daughter of the two physician characters. And, yeah, that we all had to watch that every day to see.
I don't know if Guiding Light was the one you were looking for, because it seems like it's just got a...
It's not.
In that era, it's got a lighthouse.
Yeah.
Intro.
Edge of Night. The Edge of Night. Look that one up. It just hit me. I knew it had night in it. The Edge of Night. And it had a nighttime landscape of a city. And I think I saw it on Jeopardy that it was like, what city that? And it was Cincinnati, as I recall. The Edge of Night, the announcer would say.
It debuted on CBS in April of '56.
Wow.
And stayed on CBS for the majority of its run until '75. Okay. And then moved to ABC from '75 until '84.
56 to 84.
Over 1,800 episodes available for syndication out of the 7,420 episodes that were produced.
Unbelievable. They actually had this. I remember when this was kind of in vogue in the 70s, as I recall. They had like a 90-minute prime time of it. And some of the other ones did too. They'd become so popular. And, of course, the big sponsor was Tide, when soap powder were among the big television advertisers. And it was customary, as you recall, to include like a graphic of the box, the product itself, in the in the playing of the theme song, the intro to the show, in the exit of the show. When they were showing the credits, you'd always have whoever the sponsors was, whatever they made. And Brill Cream,
I think we would actually lose our license if we played some of them for the Flintstones.
Oh, well, with the cigarette stuff?
It's illegal to play those advertisements over the air.
I didn't think about that, but yeah, how about that with the Fred Flintstone and company promoting Winston, right? Was
it the Winston Comedy Hour or something like that?
Something like that, yeah. Pretty cool. So the White House right now, I'm looking at Mehmet Oz. He is the head of the CMS. He's at the podium at the White House. I can see him flanked by Health and Human Services Secretary Robert Kennedy, and they're announcing lower weight loss drug costs. So those have exploded onto the scene the last couple of years. They are fairly pricey. There's some limits, right, on what insurance will cover, if any, on those, and they can get on up there to several $100s a month. So
yeah, from what I've seen, usually you have to try, depending on the insurance, but at least one other less expensive alternative for weight loss, depending on the insurance is depending on which one that's going to be. There are a couple different choices, but yeah. Then if that doesn't work, then they'll authorize the payment for the, GLP-1s?
Yeah, GLP-1s, exactly. So, yeah, Mo says Luke and Laura was on General Hospital. I thought I said that. If I didn't, I apologize. But what I recall, again, is it came on like at
we ran through a lot of shows.
I know we did. High noon, and everybody in my fraternity house, we had, like one TV to watch there in the TV room, as we called it. We all gather around to follow their folly, their journey, as they were having this love affair, unbeknownst to the big characters in the hospital itself. So yeah, Laura, very attractive young lady that was all like about our age, and so we tracked that.
Mailman Clayton asks, I'm presuming he's asking you because I know my answer is no, but
okay.
Are you old enough to remember Dark Shadows?
100%.
TV show?
Had to be seated for that about 3:30 in the afternoon after school every day. At Barnabas, absolutely. We remember that well. And it was, I can tell you that the light filter in the show was a reflection of the name of the show, because it's like only because we had young eyes that we could see it. Everything was just dark and dank. You know, it was intended to be that way, and they had kind of a real eerie theme song, like, you know, deal. Yeah, I do remember that, Mailman Clayton. I am old enough to remember it. That would have been what, 60s, 70s, something like that, 60s, 70s, I think. CC in Senatobia says, the commercial when I was young was always, Calgon, take me away. I absolutely remember that one, CC. Was showing typically a lady. I don't think there was any male subjects then. Lord knows, has the world changed since then, because, you know, we'd have a
dude in a dress
taking a bubble bath. Excuse me. But it would always feature like a 30-something lady in the dealing with the stress of life in her bathtub, stretched out with, of course, suds and foam covering up everything but her neck. Calgon, take me away. And what happened to that? That was pretty. When we used to bathe my kids, we'd always put bubble bath in the water there. They don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Okay. You'd buy the little. It's
pretty much exclusively for kids and women.
Okay. Product packaging that was, you know, kind of characters and stuff they like. Yeah, KC says, where's the beef? That was the old Wendy's commercial. We don't seem to be as creative with commercials as we do anymore. The old lady that would walk into the Wendy's store, well, actually be a Wendy's competitor that would pull the bun off her burger and be a little old piece of meat between the two pieces of bread. Where's the beef? That was, you'd have to agree, brilliant campaigns, because we all remember it today, right? And they kind of got known for that, and they were trying to promote the idea that they had square burgers that extended outside of the buns. I know I'm getting technical about the food here, but I just kind of remember that.
Because Dave doesn't cut corners.
Exactly right. That was pretty good.
Dark Shadows was 66 to 71.
Okay. Barnabas Collins on the C Spire tax line. Totally agree with that. I totally remember that, I should say.
In Collinsport, Maine.
And John from, yeah, that's right. Which is already kind of spooky, isn't it, Maine? Now, let's see, where was Amityville Horror? Was that not Maine? Seems like it, huh? Somewhere up there in New England? I thought that's where it was placed, where it was based.
New York State.
Oh, okay. It's up there, though. Yeah, John from Hardeman County, Tennessee. I remember this as well. The voice, you have to admit, though, the voices of these narrators on these soaps, pretty dang good. I mean, that's when we paid a lot of attention, I guess, to the voices as part of television shows, because we didn't have all the fancy graphics and stuff that gets your attention.
And all the major production studios had their guy with their voice.
Yeah. Like sands through the hourglass, so are the days of our lives. Absolutely. I don't remember that guy's name, but his voice was fantastic. I do remember that, John. Thanks for reminding. The first group on SNL made the best parody commercials. Man, you're right about that. Martha, what's her name, cutting herself up. Remember?
It's a bag of glass.
Aykroyd doing that. Oh, pay no attention to that. And blood spurting out. Oh, my gosh. We're going to step aside for a break. We're coming back in the Element Well studio. Stay with us.
From the Seabrook.
You know what that means.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
We'll do it live.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Well, we're having a little fun today, just digressing, talking about some of the old classic television shows and advertising. Really cool. Jimbo says we saw Rick Springfield in concert a few months ago, and he's just over 70 years old and was running around like he was in his 30s. That is when I was talking about Paul McCartney, who performed in New Orleans last week. A friend of mine went, took his son. It turns out his teenage son is a big fan of McCartney and wanted to take him. And so said McCartney at 83 was bouncing around the stage and voice was still clear and strong. That's cool. So Springfield, of course, he got his start as a soap opera actor. Wasn't that General Hospital as well, I think, Rhino? I remember those days. And then, of course, he rose to fame as a musical artist with Jesse's Girl, famous tune. He also hosts a show I catch on Sirius XM.
Yeah, it was General Hospital.
General Hospital, yeah.
In 81.
I don't remember his character name, but, of course, all the women were in love with him, a handsome gentleman. And he, of course, made Jesse's Girl, which was a big hit. Now he hosts a show, like a once-a-week show, it seems like on the weekends on Sirius XM.
Dr. Noah Drake.
That's it, Dr. Noah Drake. Yes.
He was playing the role of Dr. Noah Drake while simultaneously going on tour with his band because Jesse's Girl was an unexpected #1 hit.
Okay, cool. Unexpected #1 hit. Well, he hosts a show now on Sirius XM. I think, like I said, I think it's a weekly broadcast. Maybe it's on 80s on 8, I think. And so he just plays music. You know, they do a lot of shows like that. They'll get a musical artist that'll pick out music they like. But they've always got, a lot of times it's music where they know the artists themselves or some background that the public doesn't know, and they share that. I find that really entertaining and fascinating, and he does that. Yeah, this is a friend of mine. We were doing this, that, and the other. Boom, here it is. Like, wow, I didn't know that about that. But almost all these big hits and big artists, as you know, there's a story behind all of them that, for the most part, doesn't make its way out into the public sphere. Not because there's anything to hide, because we're just more focused on the music itself, I guess, than everything it took to put it together. Fascinating, though. Yeah, appreciate that, Jimbo. I'm glad to know that. 70 years old, running around. On the C Spire text line, I think you should make a guest appearance on drums in the Journey stop in Tupelo, says Ike in Saltillo. Here's what I would say to that, Rhino. I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. Remember that? Garth? Oh, what was his sidekick's name?
It was Wayne. Garth was the sidekick.
Okay, that's Wayne. Wayne's World, yeah. We're not worthy. That's what I would say to this. But I do appreciate the thought. What a dream that would be. Let's see. A little politics here. Paula Meridian says, I was watching a video yesterday about ending the filibuster. The guy was talking about how ending the filibuster could possibly end up destroying the Second Amendment if the Democrats got control again. So, yeah, here's what I'd say to that. Just a reminder that the Democrats did have such an opportunity during Joe Biden's first 2 years. They had control of the House, simple majority. That's all you need there. They had 50+1 by virtue of the vice president being a Democrat in the Senate. Remember, it was 50-50, but the vice president, in accordance with our law, can cast the tie-breaking vote. An odd number in the House, at least when everybody's fully seated at 435. Thus, if all members vote, provided they don't vote present or abstain, you could end up with a tie, but a tie loses in the House. In the Senate, you got to have 51 for a simple majority. So, to your point there, Paul, this is why we talk about Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, Democrat senators who refuse to follow the lead and capitulate to the Democrats who did, in fact, want to end the filibuster so they could push their entire agenda through onto the president, who would have signed much of those laws, much of those bills into law. Yes, that would have included extremely strict gun control. That was part of the agenda, packing the Supreme Court, making D.C. a state, codifying the right to an abortion, forcing the Green New Deal on everybody, opening up, I said that, the borders widely. The packing the Supreme Court, to me, would be perhaps the most destructive policy that they would push should they have just if they could pass legislation with a simple majority over there in the Senate. So it's Manchin and Sinema that said, no, we won't go along. Only needed one of those two, but those two made it clear they would not caucus with Democrats in ending the filibuster. So what Republicans are saying is, at least those, including the president, who are imploring Republican senators to end the filibuster, to pass the CR, the continuing resolution, to reopen the government, is, hey, look, if the Democrats get in this position, this is what they're going to do. So if you're not doing this to protect against that eventuality, you're just wasting time, because they're not going to care at that point. Something to be said for that. And it's also possible to pass or to end the filibuster strictly for the purpose of passing the continuing resolution. In other words, you could end the filibuster for legislation that would fit that description, not open it up to everything. I have mixed feelings about this.
At that point, you're just creating a new bird bath.
That's right. The bird bath being the parliamentarians' process of reviewing the legislation to determine if it is eligible for passing the Senate with a simple majority. That's basically what you're doing. You're changing those rules. You're right, Rhino. It's referred to as the bird bath, if you didn't catch us yesterday, because this option the Senate has to pass certain types of legislation, mainly those dealing with taxes and spending, revenue and spending, with a simple majority under all sorts of rules and constraints. That was something that was authored by and sponsored by Senator Robert Byrd from West Virginia back in the 80s, I think, at some point? Early 80s is when that came? Yeah, okay, mid-80s. And, of course, I also noted that he had been there a long time and has somewhat of a background with the Ku Klux Klan. In fact, maybe was thought to be like a big officer, top figure in the org chart there in the Klan. But nonetheless, it's called the Byrd Rule, and this parliamentarian review process is referred to as the bird bath. A metaphor, of course. Aren't they clever up there in Washington? If they were as good as policy making as they are inventing these
trying to be cute,
acronyms and clever little titles and stuff, we get more done. But yeah,
it's almost like they spend more time worrying about trying to be cute than actually governing.
Because it gets attention, something you pointed out that they so deeply covet and crave. Ray in Long Beach says, I have a cousin who is 80. She still lives alone, bowls in a league twice a week, drives some neighbors who are unable to drive to run errands and to doctor's appointments. That's great, Ray. It's absolutely true. As Rhino points out, some people, age has just been kind to them. And they've aged gracefully and still have their wits totally. And
part of it's genetics, part of it's how they've lived their life.
No doubt about it. Also, on the C Spire text line, in the skit you were talking about that you sent me that was essentially a parody that was based on or became the basis for what was it called?
Mama's Family.
Mama's Family, yeah. Did feature Dick Van Dyke. You can see him on the right side of the couch there. And there was something that Tim Conway says. He's telling the stories you talked about, the elephant story. And they're all cracking up. And then Mama cracked some line, and they all fell off the sofa, including Conway, who's pretty unflappable with that stuff. You remember his his character that was kind of the executive, and Carol Burnett was his secretary, and Mrs. Wiggins, and she'd come walking in inch at a time with her feet. Was great. Mrs. Wiggins. We're going to take a break right here. Coming right back with the final segment in hour 2 of Middays from the Element Wealth Studio.
Poly up.
Check it out. Let's do this.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Well, there you go. Redbone. That's about 1971 or 2, as I recall. Yeah. All right. Good stuff. Appreciate that. Rhino on the C Spire text line. Paula Meridian says, thanks for going over that. Again, I believe he's referring to the just a discussion of the filibuster and the way that works. Yeah. And, you know, Rhino, that's not, I think, widely known and understood. And the reason I say that, it's fairly common you'll hear from Republicans in particular, talking about voters, constituents. Well, why don't you get more done? You control both houses in the White House. And the simple answer is because you really don't control the legislative agenda in its entirety for any and everything you want to do without a filibuster-proof majority. That's the way our system is designed. And yes, you can absolutely end the filibuster with a simple majority. So 51 Republicans could vote today to end the filibuster for all legislation. Or they could pass a measure, I believe it would be a resolution, a rule, to do it for just a narrow scope of legislation, such as a continuing resolution to open up the government. And the president is imploring Senate Republicans to do so. And he's basically saying, hey, if you're worried about future retribution by the Democrats, rest assured when they get in that position, they are going to end the filibuster. And I 100%, Rhino, believe, had it not been for Manchin and Sinema, I think the votes were counted, and they, in fact, would have ended the filibuster. And the floodgates would have opened, and all the things I just talked about, which are their key priorities, such as really implementing ridiculously strict gun control laws, opening up the borders, codifying the right to an abortion, federalizing our elections, making D.C. a state. What else would be among those? Super high taxes, all their tax plans that Kamala Harris pronounced consistently on the campaign trail, that would have gone through. So that's what the agenda was. Packing the Supreme Court. These are sweeping changes that they seek, that they certainly would have pursued and likely passed. I don't think, given the numbers in the House, there were enough moderate-type Democrats that feared the way they might vote on those matters as it would affect them in future elections. Because when you're in a purple so-called swing district, you are more careful in the House about supporting legislation that's really deemed as very partisan. That's a problem. I totally agree and believe that. In Senate, not so much. because you represent an entire state and things kind of balance out in your favor. And you're also there for 6 years. Whereas in the House, you're there for 2. And you got to worry about it all over again in the next 2. So I think that history perhaps one day will show that Manchin and Sinema standing in that gap doesn't get a lot of attention today. Had they not done so, the Democrats would have, in fact, rammed all that crap I just talked about down our throats. Number one was federalizing elections. We could shut down our county clerk's offices, and our Secretary of State would no longer need the services of those involved in administering elections in the state of Mississippi, and it would be the case across the other states. They would totally federalize them. They saw that, of course, as a way to retain permanent control, because they would control the elections process. Now, we just reported to you yesterday that the state of Maine rejected a ballot measure that would have required just simple photo ID to vote, and rather roundly rejected it, Rhino. I think it was 60-plus something percent, as I reported yesterday. So that's the way the state. Think about the contrast between that attitude and an attitude like in Mississippi and the red states where, no, we think you ought to have to prove you're who you are with a photo ID. And in Maine, the voters said, no, we don't want people to prove who they are. That's just crazy to me. Crazy that we have that. But that's what the Democrat agenda looks like. And, of course, the Green New Deal. Oh, don't forget this one, Rhino. They want everybody to join a union, no matter what your job, your occupation is. You're going to join a union. Fox News, SuperTalk News coming your way next. Senator Brice Wiggins at 12:20 in the next hour. Stay with us.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 3, the afternoon portion of Middays on this
Friday Eve.
Senator Brice Wiggins will join us in the next segment. So we've been digressing a bit today. It's been fun talking about some of these old classic television shows, some of the skits, and, of course, the very memorable commercials. Television, of course, commercials on national networks, a big part of a company's advertising efforts. Expensive, but very effective, because we were all watching pretty much 3 channels back then. That's all you had. So you had a significant captive audience. Nowadays, of course, there are a lot more outlets, a lot more methods, and not as expensive. A lot of course, promotion and advertising on social media. YouTube, I guess I would say, is maybe the most prolific. You can't hardly watch a video anymore without getting a little ad that you at least got to endure for a few seconds before you skip it.
And that's where some of the creativity has gone, is into how can I capture your attention in the first 5 seconds before that little skip button pops up.
Yeah.
And I'll admit there have been some rather creative ways to snap you into the attention, because we've kind of been trained as a society to zone out a bit when what we're watching or listening to is taking a break, and that's something that has to be overcome, and that's part of the writing of ads, is part of the production of ads. But not all the creativity, because, you still have the creativity that's associated with Super Bowl ads, because those are still very pricey.
Yep.
So if you're going to spend that kind of money, you're going to want to make it good. But, yeah, it's online ads and the more targeted ads. It's like when you had 3 channels, they were They were much more willing to invest in the creativity, in the production of the ads, because they knew they were getting somewhere around a third of the eyeballs.
Yeah.
And nowadays, it's just much more varied in how you can spend your free time.
I think that what's different, though, is back then you didn't have all the sophisticated technology to make all these fancy graphics and ways of making your point. And you had to focus on these memorable slogans and lines, right? And that's what we remember. Where's the beef? Calgon, take me away. Or a couple of examples that come to mind. And there are numerous others, of course. But we had a couple of those pointed out on our C Spire text line today. And so that was the takeaway, right? But today, you think more about the character, the setting, the humor. I happen to really appreciate.
Or if it's a pharmaceutical ad, it's just be as vague as possible. We're selling you Cialis. Everybody knows what Cialis does, but the advertisement's going to be an elderly couple in empty bathtubs on a hillside watching a sunrise.
Yeah, you're right about that. But again, you can't recall any slogan or selling feature point other than just at that point in time you're watching people out running around like, what the hell does that have to do with Cialis? For the most part, but it's the way it rolls. And of course, big focus on diversity, right, in these ads. And you think, well, the real world's really not like that for the most part. I mean, you may have exceptions, of course. I'm not trying to say that never situation occurs, but they really got to go out of their way to do that. Of course, in the pharmaceutical ads, if it's a minute ad, 30 seconds of it's disclaimers, right? It's like, who in the heck wants to take that? It'll kill you. I mean, it really does when you hear the litany of warnings like, good grief, what are you putting, arsenic in your body here? But that's, of course, driven by our litigious society. Oh, man. But not quite the same as the old days, I would say, when...
It's not even the same as the not-so-old days of, like, the 90s and 2000s. What was it? Wasn't Garnier Fruity. It was Herbal Essence, the commercials where the women were making sounds in the shower. And
yeah.
What is going on in there? It was selling shampoo.
Yeah. And also, that's another good point. Back then, we didn't have as much stuff to buy, and there was more focus on selling just the staple type products, household goods, soap, shower products, Calgon bubble bath, and of course automobiles. Right? See the USA and a Chevrolet. I mean, gosh, I think everybody from that era certainly remembers that. And those were effective ads.
And they didn't end with a wall of text in really fine print to read.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Speaking of, by the way, packing the Supreme Court, former Attorney General Holder, Eric Holder, you remember him. Wasn't he now known for, when they go low, we go lower?
When they go low, we kick them.
We kick them, something like that. Okay, yeah. So now he's calling for packing the Supreme Court. This in response to the Democrat victories in New Jersey and Virginia and New York and some other areas of the country, some local races. Although the crazy socialist in Minneapolis, I think, Rhino, ultimately did not win, was in the...
I think he's going to a runoff.
A runoff, okay.
Nobody got a majority.
Okay.
But he was not winning, no.
Right. But there was some expectations that candidate may prevail. But so Holder did a video, was on some news outlets, Midas Touch, MEIDAS Touch Network? Not familiar.
Those people.
Yeah. Well, and the reason I caught it is because Stephen Moore, of course, runs the Unleash Prosperity Hotline. He dumps an email every day, has some of his own writings, his staff's writings, and then just will pick up on some stories like this. He, of course,
you'll find less biased news coverage in the National Enquirer than you would there.
Oh, gotcha. Well, he's calling for a packing of the Supreme Court. This particular newsletter, this was from a couple of days ago, actually yesterday, Wednesday. There's a great meme in it, Rhino. Somebody who posts on Twitter as Cat Turd, CATTURD, has got a meme, and it's the Statue of Liberty that is secured with cables on the back of a flatbed truck, and it's on the road, and it says, just spotted on I-95, headed to Florida. Pretty good, pretty creative. So that's what Stephen had to say in his newsletter yesterday. Let's see, there was something else he pointed out that about the president negotiating these deals with Ozempic to sell some of the weight loss drugs for $149, and we just saw a press release on that. I got to tell you, I don't support this. This is price controls. It's maybe popular. I get it. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't think about the longer-term risks of interfering with the market here. Oh, it's cheaper for me. It's all I care about. And I get it. I understand the natural reaction there. But even Moore, who is a huge supporter of President Trump and worked in his Council of Economic Advisors in his first term, he comes out and says, no, 1,000 times no. We love the idea of allowing manufacturers to sell direct to patients. I agree with that, too, and have supported regulatory changes to allow a direct sales channel to compete with insurance pharmacy sales. But in a free market, buyers and sellers set prices, not politicians. Amen. If drug makers believe that this or any administration will set floors on their prices, the amount of investment dollars for finding cures will dry up. I totally agree. So I get that this is popular.
I agree in principle. I disagree in this instance that R&D money is going to dry up. It might dry up for the injections, but pharmaceutical companies are pumping tons of money into finding a way to give you the same weight loss treatment orally. And when they find it, whoever does it first is going to make
no doubt
a boatload.
100%. I think, however, what he's referring to here is in a general sense. If the government starts imposing price controls, pharmaceutical makers would reduce their investment in R&D in all types of drugs. But I agree with you specific to these drugs. We're still in the early stages where there is an opportunity to get a pill form, oral form, and you're right. They're going to make a fortune when they figure that out. Coming right back in the Element Well studio with Senator Brice Wiggins.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Welcome to our show.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Okay, now you have a good one.
I never meant to be so bad to you. One thing I said that I would never do. A look from you and I would fall from grace, and that would wipe the smile right from my face. Do you remember when we used to dance, and incidents arose from circumstance? One thing led to another, we were young.
That's Asia bumping us into this segment. So they were the opening act for Journey when I saw them a few years ago, right? I was talking about the Journey concert coming through Cadence Bank Arena next June up in Tupelo.
And I saw Journey in 1988 in the Coast Coliseum,
I think.
In the
Prime. Man.
Yeah, Prime.
Wow.
That's
awesome.
I think that was my first experience with, shall we say, that was wafting around the well, I mean, we can say it. We've now legalized part of it, so the stuff it was floating around up there.
That was kind of common back then. That voice you hear, of course, is Senator Brice Wiggins, represents District 52, Jackson County, serves as chair of the Senate Judiciary A Committee. Senator, been a while. Good to have you in the studio today. So.
Yeah, good to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, are you in town doing some work?
We have a joint public health committee meeting at the Capitol between the House and Senate public health committees.
Okay.
About this morning was infant mortality, and then this afternoon I'll be headed back there. It's on mental health. So, and what we saw on the infant mortality, the stats are. They're not good. We're doing really good in education. We're not doing good in that, and so we need to get our heads around it.
Dr. Dan Edney, of course, the chief health officer of the state, just in here last week discussing that. You know, he pays a lot of attention to that. He is health focused, I think, in that position than anybody we've ever had. I mean, He really is hyper focused on the health of Mississippi citizens, and he also makes the point that I think is spot on, is totally valid, that it also affects our economy.
It most definitely does.
Yeah.
When I got Chevron down in my neck of the woods, in my district, they recruit nationally. And they literally recruit people and trying to bring people from other places for engineers, and you can bet that they look at stuff like that, because when people come in, they're going, what is it if I'm raising a family? What does that look like? Now, fortunately, down where, and the stats bear that out, down where I'm at, relatively speaking, we fare well.
Yeah.
But we've got to do that for all of Mississippi.
Right. Totally agree. And then infant mortality is I've had discussions with Dr. Edney, and I'm sure you're aware, so much of that is avoidable.
It is, and you heard some of that today at the hearing, where and he said you cannot separate infant mortality from mother health, and that led to some other questions. Representative Missy McGee made that point. The mothers have to be healthy, you can't wait, and health is a determining factor of that. And there's a lot of factors that go into it, but you have to be cognizant about that.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Well, I've had the fortune of touring the neonatal intensive care unit at UMC, not far from where we are. Got a guided tour about 5 years ago. And it'll change you, just walking in that big room with all those fantastic nurses running around with smiles on their faces and springs in their step, taking care of these little bitty sick babies. And when I posed a question to, some of the healthcare professionals, how much of this was avoidable? Like almost all of it.
Yes, that's right.
I honestly would like to suggest perhaps that maybe you guys could work with UMC. The entire legislature ought to take a tour. I'm serious.
I'm all for that. We need to do that. But on to your point about responsibility, so that I actually try to put my words into action. So if people know this if you follow my social media, but I've embarked on getting a better lifestyle, healthier lifestyle, and I've actually been running 5Ks and stuff. And part of that was changing my diet. And, my doctor, I went into my doctor and he said, Brice, your blood pressure is through the roof. And we have history. And I said, well, doctor, dealing with politicians and lawyers tends to raise my blood pressure. Yeah. And so I had to do something. But the most interesting thing was I changed my diet, what I was eating, got more focused. Yeah. And I feel, it's been good.
Yeah.
And my point is, it's responsibility, and it's what you said. And my doctor, he's like, I asked him, I said, well, why didn't you tell me early? And he's like, I did. You just have to go do it. And it's not like it's not out there. And then I started, quote, shopping for more healthier foods. Lo and behold, I found them.
Yeah.
Like, I just wasn't, me personally, I just wasn't looking at them for them.
It doesn't take that much adjustment to have an effect.
So, and you know, so there's a combination of all that, but we have to take ownership of that.
100%. Well, hopefully, and a lot of that, as you know, requires education of our population to understand some of these healthy practices.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And people, you know, you don't know what you don't know, but we need to be assisting in that. But you know, there were discussions about payments and help. I'm not sure about all that. It's apparently worked in Michigan. That's what we heard today. I think the first step is taking responsibility for yourself, and that's what we got to do.
We got to impress that, I should say, on people, that they understand how critical that is to.
So if you want to run a 5K with me, I challenge you to do that.
Well, I hypertension runs in my family as well, and so I try to walk almost every night, 2.5 miles with my dog. And it's kind of hilly, but as you know, just that little bit of exercise like that, and we walk fairly briskly.
There's so much data now that they've been doing. I mean, stuff like that, and they say just doing that helps
big time.
And I was at Ocean Springs Rotary actually yesterday, and the talk was on dementia, and the doctor from Singing River Hospital System said what they're finding is if you're elderly and you just get out and walk, it actually reverses part of this. The research is showing it reverses part of that. You know, it's not definitive, but the research is showing that if you're healthy, you can stave off dementia and that kind of stuff, and Alzheimer's.
That's awesome. All right. In the political world, of course, we had special elections in the state of Mississippi on Tuesday. We've covered those in detail here on the show. We certainly did yesterday. But, of course, the big news is that the Republicans no longer have the supermajority in the Senate, and the Democrats are celebrating this like they've absolutely won the Mega Millions lottery. I feel like they're a little over their skis here because the supermajority comes into play in a fairly limited amount of situations in lawmaking.
Yeah, exactly. I gave an interview to WLBT yesterday, and look, first let me say, hey, elections have consequences, and it was a good night for the Democrats. Yeah. Okay, you know what? Guess what? If 2 years ago or whatever, when the Republicans, we were out sending out our press releases and champion and all that.
Yeah.
But let this be a lesson in how politics is fickle. Okay. Now on that point, supermajority. Look, the reality is everything comes down to a vote, and I went back and looked, and in our law and Constitution, there's really only 3 things that require a 2/3 vote. 2 of those, since I've been in the legislature since 2013, we hadn't done. The other one is suspension of the rules, which only has been done in certain instances. And I will tell you, Gerard, honestly, there's been some recalcitrant Republicans who refuse to go along. And that's a fact.
Okay.
And those things, I know people have their opinions, but suspension of the rules was done with the change of the flag. Democrats actually were voting for it. There were Republicans who didn't. Okay. So
you got the necessary 2/3.
You get the necessary 2/3, and some would say it doesn't matter where you get it from, depending on the issue. Yeah. So yes, if you're saying, "Oh, we broke the supermajority," well, you know, it was expected because of the way the districts played out.
Yeah.
But
after the DOJ said go redraw those things, you kind of knew that would be the outcome.
Yeah, that's right. I think, but that's also not to say that we as Republicans don't need to heed some of the warnings, 100%. And I'm willing to talk about that.
Okay, let's do that on the other side of the break. It's Senator Brice Wiggins from Jackson County in the Element Wealth studio.
Here comes the sun. Here comes the
From the sea.
Properly set all controls before recording.
All systems go. The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
The road is long with a many winding tongue that leads us to who knows where, who knows where. But I'm strong.
That's Alan Clark there, Rhino, on the lead vocals for the Hollies. Great tune there. He ain't heavy, he's my brother, bumping us into this segment. We've got Senator Brice Wiggins from Jackson County in the Element Well studio. So, we kind of covered I would think, kind of a nothing burger, honestly, with the Democrats winning races they should have won in the state Senate after redistricting occurred. But we got a bigger thing going on at the national level, as you well know, a case that has made its way to the Supreme Court dealing with congressional district drawing lines, boundaries. Louisiana, I think, kind of the main plaintiff in that case at the Supreme Court. They seem to be leaning towards maybe striking down that practice as being what the Voting Rights Act was all about. That's where all that stems from. And you've got California redistricting, Texas redistricting. What a mess! But I'm wondering, Senator, if the Supreme Court says, "Hey, look, you can't order the states to go draw lines solely on the basis of race because you think that particular district ought to have someone of a particular race to effectively and fairly represent the constituents," if they strike that down, should you guys be drawing new lines for District 1 here, or 2, pardon me, in the United States congressional seats in Mississippi? That would be Benny Thompson's.
Throw me a question I didn't expect there,
well,
so thank you. No.
It's just something I've been thinking about.
No, it's good.
We ought to have legislation teed up, ready to go.
Well, so let me say this.
Okay.
So first, I'm no expert legally on redistricting law and all that.
Okay.
I was on the redistricting committee. And I can tell you from that experience, in being a lawyer, there is all kinds of laws, not just race, that are involved in that. And so my point is that in Mississippi, the way it's done, it's not just race. There's a whole bunch of other things.
Okay.
On the race issue, to your point, the Supreme Court over time has said that race alone cannot be a standard. They did that in I think it's the University of Michigan law school applications. They have set that precedent, which I totally agree with. It should not be the sole factor on that. And so if you're looking at the tea leaves, you can expect that if that's the issue, and I don't know all the briefed issues on that's probably where that's going to go. Now, let me say this, that I actually think the Supreme Court's trying to figure all this out because a couple years ago there was a Alabama case, and they actually upheld, or no, they said Alabama had to redistrict. There was also another case in the South where they said they had to redistrict. They did it with us. So now they're going to say, and now the prognosticators are saying, well, now they're going to strike down that. So it gets very specific and very technical.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, what I think where things will kind of lay out is it can't be the sole issue for making determination. And mind you, if you look back in the 70s and all, when all of this 60s and 70s and all this kind of started, the Supreme Court in those decisions said you can do it because to correct wrongs from the past, and I'm paraphrasing.
Okay.
That's what they said. Okay, and that's why in the University of Michigan case for the law school, they said race cannot be the sole factor to do this, but it can be a factor in when you admit people.
I got you.
It's where they put it on the pyramid, if you will.
Yeah.
And so that's why I guess lawyers get paid money to make these arguments.
I mean, Harvard, right?
And Harvard's the same.
Yeah.
Right.
When struck down the so-called affirmative action in admissions.
Right, exactly. Because race was used as a reason. I'm sorry, it got put in that position to quote correct the past.
Yeah.
And actually, in the Michigan case, if I'm not mistaken, Chief Justice Roberts said it may, or one of the justices said it may have been good then, and nobody can deny progress has been made. For in the last 40 years, 50 years, and so is it time that is no longer the case? And I think the Supreme Court has been saying yes, but it gets complicated. But you know what? Our democracy changes all the time.
Okay,
and so that's what I know about those things.
Let's pivot a bit. Are you thinking about introducing legislation dealing with the teaching of civics in our schools?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So the short answer is yes, because, Gerard, it is unbelievable to kind of this point that how our generations don't understand civics. I don't know if it just didn't get taught, if it wasn't described, people weren't listening. I know it's not being taught. And when I say civics, I'm talking about federalism with a small f, federal versus local versus state versus local, checks and balances, the separation of powers, everything that's built into the Constitution. And we had, when the bill came up in committee in the Senate Education Committee last year, we had this discussion. And it was interesting because people said, like, look, the things that you see out in the media and somebody saying this happened, but Congress can't do it. Well, yes, they can, because they've been given the power. For example, and I'm not weighing in on one side or the other, but the tariffs that are going before the Supreme Court, and I was driving up here this morning, and it said the justices are looking askance on the president's use of the tariffs. And in the comments, it was because that act, the use of tariffs are given to Congress for the purpose of raising money, not to the executive branch. That's called separation of powers. And we have to abide by that. We have to do that. That is what our democracy, our republic, is built on. And so, and look, the funnier part is, like, and people mean well, but look, we go home and say, hey, Brice, how's Washington doing? And we're in Jackson, I'm a state senator. People mean well, but we need to understand that, and we've lost that. I
agree.
And so it passed overwhelmingly in the Senate. The House, I hear, is I hope the House is going to take it up this year. There's a lot of people, and since the session, I've talked about it. It's generated a lot of support. I think we have a lot of outside support for that. I've had people come up and said, man, Senator Wiggins, that's a good bill. We need, because people, and look, to be honest, I think the social media effect has created a lot of problems, because, like, there's no barriers to social media, and people are weighing in, and it's just wrong when it comes to the Constitution. But also, I think that people want a black and white answer, and if you understand the Constitution, and I'm talking about the Mississippi and our U.S. Constitution, there's very limited black and white answers in there, and people think it's in there, and it's not. And it's, our democracy is based on the three branches interworking together.
I wonder if we shouldn't require students to pass a basic civics test.
This is what this is going to do.
Okay.
This is what, and the way the bill was structured last year was in your middle and high schools to have a year's worth of civics instruction, and you have to pass it, and you have to pass that course. They've done it in Utah. They've done it in a couple other states as well.
Okay.
So, yes, we are saying you have to pass it. And, by the way, not just your 8th grade, not just 8th grade, and you say this is where, the state capitol is located. This is how the branches interact, separation of powers, checks and balances, so that we end up with a generation that are engaged citizens. And
I think you're right. Little on the lawmaking process, perhaps.
Yeah, because and look, I understand. This stuff can get dry and all that.
Yeah.
But when I go and speak, I like to talk about the lawmaking process, the making of the sausage, if you will.
Yeah.
People want to know. They have a right to know, and but they don't, because it was never taught.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was, you're going back over time. When I grew up, it was the I'm Just a Bill on Capitol Hill, the schoolhouse rock. You remember that?
Oh, very well.
And we don't have those anymore. I actually got it out and showed my kids. They thought that was a little goofy, but it was great because everybody in my generation knew I'm a Bill on Capitol Hill.
Yeah. All right. We got a final segment. If you want to stick around, we can continue the discussion, because I want to get you to react to the speaker's priority, which is school choice, see where you float on that one. And then also these rules around our state being part of the American Counselors Association, something I brought up in the last session. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, if you have any thoughts about that.
Sure.
We'll come back. We got a break right here. Final segment of Middays on this Wednesday is coming up next.
Before you're the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go. Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long wait while I'm sitting in committee. But I know I'll be a law someday. At least I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill.
Gee, Bill, you certainly have a lot of patience and courage.
Well, I got this far. When I started, I wasn't even a bill. I was just an idea. Some folks back home decided they wanted a law passed, so they called their local...
So Rhino, right on cue there, found your...
There ought to be a law. Then he sat down...
I'm just a bill. That's awesome.
I like that. Man, Johnny, that was great. Thank you very much. Oh, he's
awesome. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so... we got just a few minutes in this segment. It's about a 7.5-minute segment. So, the Speaker has made it clear that pursuing legislation that would implement a robust school choice program in the state of Mississippi is a top priority for him and many members of the House. Some, as you well know, aren't necessarily on board with him, depending on their constituencies and the districts. The Lieutenant Governor's never been a fan, although he has signaled recently an interest in at least allowing students to transfer freely in public schools, so-called open enrollment. In the past, he's always qualified that with only D and F, and he's interchangeably used district and school, and there is a difference, as you know, between that. But all that to say, where do you stand and where do you think this is going in the next session?
Yeah, so there's a lot of talk about that. I've been on the Senate Education Committee since I got in the legislature, and this isn't the first time we've had this debate. Look, I think where things stand right now, and you hate to say it, but there is no bill right now.
Right.
And it's hard getting people certainly to commit as a legislator if I don't see it. And I get that.
Yeah.
And so, I think what the Speaker, and I give the Speaker credit for getting out and having the debate, because it's not an easy debate to have, and he's out there setting that tone.
Yeah.
And so to the extent that what it's going to look like, I don't know. Okay. So, and there's a lot of different things that fall under the school choice banner. And so what is that going to look like? We don't know. Of course, the Senate...
Whatever can pass is what it looks like.
Well, and that's starting to be what it does look like. I can tell you what did. You mentioned portability. We passed portability in the Senate last year. We passed a version of portability. What you were talking about, the lieutenant governor, about moving.
I missed that.
Moving between that. And down on the coast, this may be where the lieutenant governor got it. Down on the coast, we have a version of portability.
Yes, some agreements. Yeah,
you have
but
that.
There's some tuition associated with that for the local portion.
And I think you're getting into what is a big issue is this unfettered. Let's just let everybody know accountability. We cannot not have accountability.
Sure,
and that is a fact. Okay. And I was thinking about what is to address that. What is a good kind of structure? And I've been on your show talking about the Early Learning Collaborative Act, which we passed, which is part of our success. And that was structured that had a, quote, lead partner, which was a nonprofit or a school district, because they have to abide by the actual accounting principles and have to be have to abide by and stay out of fraud. Okay?
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And I also want to say this, Gerard, that I do a lot of work in youth court. I'm chairman of JudA. And by the way, I went on Empower's podcast and talked about school choice.
Heard it, yeah.
And, the argument that, parents, just let the parents, let me say this. If you've ever walked into a youth court, the reason those children are there is because those parents' decisions were not good. The fact of the matter is we have parents in this state who it's a minority who are not making good decisions. That's why you have children in youth court being adopted because their parents have been on drugs or something like that. Okay, what I'm saying is I'm not casting a blanket.
Yep.
What I'm saying is the fact of the matter is the decisions being made for the welfare of children are not always the best in the state. Okay, and so my kids went to public school. My mother was a librarian at a private school, Resurrection Catholic School. So we have experience on that.
Okay.
And I understand the where people are coming from. And so, I think that we need to see what the bill's going to look like, and then what are the particular issues that we need to address.
Well, so I missed the portability bill, Rhino. I'm a little surprised that I don't remember that. So here's the question: what happened?
There was a lot going on last session.
I know that, but the bill that passed the House got pocket vetoed by Senator DeBar. That's Jansen Owens' bill. What happened to the Senate bill?
It went, as I understand it, went back over there in some other legislation, and we were exchanging bills at that point. Let me put it that way.
Okay, it must have been embedded in something else.
Yeah, that's right. And then I think that looking at a version of the Tim Tebow Act, which was that we actually the Senate passed last year with accountability measures in there. People recognize that times are changing, and so I'm open to looking at different things. I certainly want to do that. But we have to be, devil's in the details, and we just need to look at that as these things come.
Okay, fair enough. All right, Senator Brice Wiggins has been our guest. We are out of time here today. Back with you in the Element Well studio tomorrow. Until then, stay safe and God bless everyone.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.